And welcome to the November 5th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. In accordance with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, tonight's public meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals is physically closed to the public in order to avoid group congregation. There are alternative public access measures in place. The meeting is being televised, as is customary, via Falmouth Community Television, and real-time public comment can be addressed to the Zoning Board of Appeals utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software for remote access. This application will allow users to view the meeting and send a comment or question to the chair via the chat function. Submitted text questions will be read into the record at the appropriate points in the meeting. And the Zoom login instructions can be found at www.falmouthmass.us/ZBA. I'll introduce the board at this time. My name is TJ Hurry. I'm the chair of the board. We have Ken Foreman, who is the vice chair, Bob Dugan, who is the clerk, Ed Van Kuren, who is a full voting member, Scott Zielinski, who is a full voting member as well, Mary Berry, who is an associate member, and James Morse, who is an associate member as well, and he will be joining us shortly. We have Noreen Stockman, who is the zoning administrator, Ashley DeMello, who is the recording secretary for the night, Thomas Cox and Adriana Pantano from the Falmouth IT department are helping us out as well. And of course, our friends at FCTV are helping broadcast this meeting as well. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with applying the zoning bylaws for the town, and we consider requests for special permits, variances, and appeals as provided in the town bylaws, which have been approved by town meeting and the Attorney General's office for the Commonwealth. All decisions are made through the public hearing process. The board's goal is to hear testimony from the applicant and from the public, and also to allow a full and fair discussion of the project prior to rendering a decision. All decisions that the board makes are made through the public hearing process. To begin each hearing, the clerk will read the public announcement of the hearing and then present any pertinent information from the file, such as referrals from town departments and summarizing correspondences. The applicant or the applicant's representative will have 15 minutes to make a presentation, and then time may be extended by vote of the board. The board will then question the applicant, and the public will be invited to comment as well. Public comment should be only directed at the project itself. We ask you to please refrain from making any personal or derogatory statements. Public comment can include an opinion in favor, in opposition, or it might just simply be a question about the nature of the project. And again, you can provide public comment via the Zoom chat function, and that is accessible at www.falmouthmass.us/ZBA. And if anyone out there does want to provide public comment, please add your full name and address for the record, and we will address it at the appropriate times during the meeting. The board will then either close or continue the hearing when the board is satisfied that enough information has been presented by testimony and in the file to make a decision. By motion and vote of the board, the hearing will be closed. In the alternative, we may continue the hearing to a future date and time. After a hearing is closed, no more testimony may be taken. And as for board discussion and decision, the board may then further discuss the project among ourselves and make a motion to deny or approve would be made and voted upon. The motion will include a summary of key findings and conditions. An affirmative vote of 4 members, which is a supermajority, is required for approvals of motions on special permits, variances, and appeals. A split vote, such as a 3-2 vote, would be a failure to carry and would result in denial of the project. Under Massachusetts general law, if a special permit is denied, the applicant cannot return to the board for 2 years unless the project is substantially different. So turning to our agenda for the night, we have public comment followed by 1 continuation, 3 new hearings, and we do have a number of items on our open meeting agenda. So first up is public comment. This public comment is meant for anything that is not on the agenda. So if anyone has anything to say out there in the public for something that is not on the agenda tonight, please go ahead and type it into the webinar chat using your full name and address. And if anything pops up, I'll be sure to make that announcement. right, I am not seeing anything at the moment. If anything does pop up, I'll certainly make that announcement. But we can move on to our continuation scheduled for 6:30. It is application 51-20, Heald Trustees, 19 Shapquet Bars Road in West Falmouth. And for the applicant, we have Attorney Clower. And Bob, my apologies. Can you just remind us of who the voting members are on this? I don't seem to have that in front of me at the moment.
It's the regular members.
Very good. Thank you, Bob. Attorney Clower.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower, and I am an attorney with Allowance Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth. As a brief refresher, I know we were here just a few weeks ago, but as a brief refresher, I'm representing Philip and Jennifer Heald, the owners of 19 Shapquet Bars Road. We're looking for permission for a 3-car garage, that garage being 814 square feet. They've raised and are rebuilding their existing house, and it's a 1.5-story, 4-bedroom home. Whereas the lot is under 30,000 square feet, the garage does require a special permit. The relevant portion of the bylaw does not set forth any standards, so we have to look to section 240-216, where the threshold question is, does the proposed use have an adverse effect that overbalances the beneficial effects to the neighborhood and to the town? This particular lot is more than adequate in size and does not change the proposed use of the property, only increases the owner's utilization of the existing space. Following our last meeting, we did submit some additional information that was requested by the board, which included a copy of the driveway permit, comments from engineering relative to the driveway permit that were implemented by the contractor, a drainage plan that the owner had prepared and implemented, and revised floor plans and architectural renderings. As was noted in our correspondence, the driveway permit was obtained, and it's actually a requirement before getting a building permit. And the engineering department's comments were taken into account. The board had some questions about the second floor space above the garage. That is intended as unfinished space, only for storage. The original plans had stairs on the exterior as a potential means of accessing it, which is something the applicants had considered, but they're not doing that as reflected on the revised plans that were submitted. That space can be accessed only through a 5-foot crawl space, which is through one of the bedrooms on the second floor. To try to address the elephant in the room, so to speak, I certainly understand that some of the board members were upset at the last hearing. And I only want to mention that the homeowner did not act with any malice, and there was no intent to get away with something. They weren't trying to get something past the town or past the board. They were following the advice of their contractor. They thought it was appropriate and acceptable to submit a building permit reflecting a 2-car garage, and after the issuance of the building permit to apply for a 3-car garage or a special permit. This is a method that has been used by applicants and contractors a number of times. As I mentioned at the last hearing, there were 2 very similar special permit projects before this board within the last 6 months. However, it's clear that you as a board don't want to see projects proceed in that nature moving forward. There was never really any indication of that in the past, but it is certainly heard and it is understood. I would ask, though, that you not punish this particular homeowner for doing something that they didn't know was wrong and had been approved in the past. I think it's very clear that that's not to be the case moving forward, but we need to, establish that. I believe that when you look to the bylaw, the approval of the application is appropriate. The main question is, does the proposed use have an adverse effect that overbalances the beneficial effects? The answer to that question is no. The site's more than adequate in size. Allowing the garage does not change the nature of the proposed use in any way, and there's no impact on traffic flow or safety. I'd be happy to address any questions the board might have, but I believe that based on these factors, the standards within the bylaw, that you can certainly issue a special permit for this project.
Thank you, Attorney Clower, and got myself on mute. Thank you, Attorney Clower. If there is anyone out there who has any public comment, go ahead and type that into the webinar chat using your full name and address. We will get to it shortly. And as for board comment, Ed, any questions?
No, not right now.
All right. Bob?
No questions.
Harry?
No questions.
Scott?
Yeah, Mr. Clowers, is the contractor in question a local contractor?
It is.
Is he an experienced contractor?
He is. They are.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Scott. Ken, anything?
No question.
Very good. James?
No questions.
All right. I am not seeing anything in the webinar chat at the moment. No, the board really didn't have many questions, but any follow-ups for now? All right.
Mr. Hurry, if I may, given kind of the discussion at the last hearing, if the board would consider having their discussion prior to closing the hearing, it would be greatly appreciated by me and the applicant.
All right, Attorney Cloud. All right, so would the board like to have any discussion regarding this project prior to closing the hearing? Does anyone want to start us off? All right, not everyone at once. So I could go first. Basically, I do see this as an approvable project. I would be voting in favor. And like Attorney Clara said, there's been instances that before this board, there's been situations where the application has come after the building permit, and I hate to see that. I really don't, but I can't fault the applicant themselves. I think the fault may lie with contractors, with the building department. And that's certainly a discussion that this board can have outside of this hearing to relay our concerns with the building commissioner and what we expect going forward with the public hearing process, the special permit process. But ultimately, I can't fault this individual applicant, especially since they haven't done anything wrong on their part. But I think definitely going forward, perhaps we could have an open meeting about this, about how to address this issue that's come up a number of times with this current building department. So that's how I feel on the project.
I just have one question. Is this a 3-bedroom or is it a 4? The septic?
I believe that the number of bedrooms was not changing in the house. I'm looking for. And of course, I'm doing this hearing not at my desk for the first time, so I don't have access to the file. I believe the Healds are here this evening. I believe that's Mr. Heald as Phil and as a participant.
So the field card says it's a 3. So is that what the septic was designed for?
It's designed as a 4-bedroom system.
Okay, and so is that to encompass that area that's called the sewing room on the 2nd floor?
Let's see here. If that is an issue, I believe that could be addressed by casing that opening. But I see there's 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th bedroom. So the sewing room could certainly be done as a cased opening if that was an issue for the.
So I pulled up the plans that I have, but for some reason I only have the 2nd floor. So on the 1st floor plan that you have, what does it list for bedrooms on the 1st floor?
There's two on the first floor, which I can share with you if you'd like, Mr. Dugan.
That's okay. So you've got two on the first floor, and then you've got two on the second, and then plus the sewing room.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only question I had.
All right. Anyone else? Ed, how do you feel?
I think we just give it to him this time. Not much we can do about it, really.
All right. Scott? Oh, sorry, Scott, you're on mute.
I said, I think Ed's wrong about there's not much we can do about it. Given that, and going against my better judgment, the statement that Mr. Clower made that the applicants didn't know, not knowing them and not hearing from them and having no I was inclined to deny this permit, but I have to give them the benefit of the doubt this time. I didn't like the way it went down. I didn't like the fact that there was no permit to verify what we were looking at on our site visit. And I didn't like the way that it was just assumed that because it was always done before that it was going to be done this time. And in all honesty, I really, that in and of itself, I would have voted this last at the first hearing. But Kevin, you just changed my mind by giving you the benefit of the doubt that they did not know. I asked the two questions your contractor should have known. All right. So, Mr. Chairman, I am going to vote in favor of this simply because I'm going to give the homeowners the benefit of the doubt, but I really don't like the way this went down.
Understood.
As I said, I think that's certainly understood. That's heard and it's understood, and that's something that we will certainly know moving forward. Not these applicants, of course, but just as a general base of knowledge.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Ken, how do you feel?
So, this is in fact not the first time that this particular contractor has not abided by a permit. And I'm opposed.
All right. Bob?
Yeah, I'm also opposed on this one.
All right. Mary and James? I'm sorry, I just, I know that Mary and James aren't voting on this, but I always value everyone's opinion. If either one of you have any sort of comment? None? Mary? Okay, they're saying no. Attorney Clower?
I think that it's not necessarily accurate to say that the contractor didn't abide by the permit. This is something that he's discussed with the building inspector in the past. It's something I've discussed with the building inspector in the past. And until he's looking for approval for a certificate of occupancy, it's not a violation. We are seeking the appropriate permit, and if the board were to deny this, it's certainly something that could be remedied. I don't think it is something the board needs to deny. As I've said, I think it's very clear where the board's position on this is now. That wasn't my understanding prior to our first meeting. As I've mentioned, I obtained a very similar special permit for myself doing this, and the board didn't express this sort of reluctance. And even before I did that, I spoke with Mr. Palmer at the building department, and he indicated that he was perfectly fine with that approach. So
So, Mr. Clower, what you're saying is that it's customary for this board to, it's customary for projects in this town to go forward without the appropriate zoning permits and then come afterwards to seek the permits.
I think that this is still very much a project that's under construction. I think this is not something
But
where,
what if there's a reason why that permit should be denied?
well, as I've said, if the permit were to be denied, I think there's a clear remedy, which would be.
There may be in this particular case, but what about other cases?
I don't think that it is always, I don't think it's as a blanket statement that it's fair to say that it's always okay to seek a permit during the construction process. But this is something where there
So
is.
just when you're representing the client then?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all, Mr. Foreman. I'm saying that there are situations where it's clear that a project couldn't happen without the appropriate zoning. This is a third garage bay that could be built or not framed, as the case may be. And that's, I think, different than creating a structure with a lot coverage that might exceed what it's supposed to, or creating a structure in a setback that it's not supposed to be in. I think it's a very different circumstance. And I think that the fact that this is something that the board has approved in the past, and we're not saying it should be that should be the case moving forward, but I think that it's unfair to these particular applicants to punish them for effectively following what's been done in the past and listening to the contractor who had reason to think that this would be approvable, because again, it's something that has been discussed both by the contractor and by myself with Rod Palmer as an acceptable means of moving forward. It's clear that this doesn't want that to be the case any longer.
So, Mr. Cloud, you made a statement that, so you've spoken to the building commissioner, and he thought it perfectly fine for you to cut in the third bay and frame it in, and then go for the permit after the fact, because that doesn't seem to be the information that we're getting from the building commissioner.
No, what I've discussed with the building commissioner in the past is obtaining a building permit for a two-car garage, and then with an area that could be done as a third-car garage, third bay, and then seeking the special permit after the issuance of the building permit. That is something I've discussed with the building commissioner. That's what I'm saying.
But in this case, it was framed in advance.
It was.
All right. Any follow-up questions or comments from the board?
A quick follow-up comment on the plans. It does show that the garage bay is framed. It wouldn't have been trimmed because that could have been covered with plywood effectively, if need be. But the plans did show it as being framed out, just not trimmed out necessarily.
So
Understood.
the plans didn't say in that possible third, it was just put in as if it was set up. There was no notation on the plan at the building department?
The original plan actually said frame for potential third garage bay. It said frame for a potential overhead door in future phase. My apologies.
So that would be in future phase. So if you're reading future phase, wouldn't you assume that would be a different phase that would be applied for? It wouldn't be something being applied for in advance?
I understand that this is not the way the board wants to see these projects move forward.
Well, I'm also trying to understand a little bit with the building department, because it appeared that the way this was worded is that it was okay with the building commissioner because it was on a plan. And that's not what we're hearing from the building commissioner. We're hearing it was a potential that would be put in a future phase that would be applied for, but there was actually no application for it. So I just want to be clear. Are you saying the building commissioner said it was okay to go forward with it, or that wasn't part of the discussion?
What I'm saying is that the plan submitted to the building commissioner reflected that being framed out. if this was not to be built, they wouldn't have trimmed it out, and it would have covered with siding.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Go ahead, Scott.
Mr. Clow, Attorney Clow, could you be more specific between the difference between framing out and trimming out? Was the doorway in or was it out? Was that approved or not?
So what I mean by framed out is that the 2x4s on the interior would have reflected a frame for a door, but it could have been sided over. When I say trimmed out, I mean with siding and an actual trim material.
As you recall, you and I discussed at our previous meeting that the foundation was poured with the intent of the three. That has nothing to do with the frame out. That would have to be boxed out and then framed over. So that's where my heartache started with this when I inspected the site and I saw that there was no seam, that third bay was an addition to the original one, number one. Number two, that it was formed already. So I think for the benefit of the rest of the board, you need to be a little more specific about the framing and the boxing out of this.
So
You're losing me.
that's not my intent. It's certainly not my intent. I think that this can certainly be shown on a plan as a potential development further down the road, and they've opted to apply for it now. We understand that the construction went further along during the process than it should have. I'm not disputing that. I think that that is not a reflection on the homeowners. I think that this is a project that this board can approve. I think that what I'm concerned is that the board is punishing the contractor, and it's clear the contractor was wrong.
Did you say?
I have Rob Cabral here, who is actually the project manager. Rob.
We did speak with Rod Palmer specifically about this, and we were given permission to pour the foundation drops and frame the wall. The drops were permitted and applied for in the plans, and we were given permission to do the drops. And the headers were framed in, as were the sides.
So when you got when you got permission at the time of the permit to get the drop, did anybody from the building department ask you what your intentions were? Is that in the plan?
So we were to apply for a future permit for a future garage door.
So somebody specifically said to you, you said, I'm gonna pour this with 3 bay openings, and then we're gonna
Correct.
BA for a special permit. Was that the language?
Correct.
Okay. So there was intent.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, I've changed my mind as well. Sorry.
No worries, Scott. So you're going the other way?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt to just own it. And it took too long for me to get there. I mean, I apologize, but yeah, I've changed my mind as well.
The intent was to have pour the 3 bays and frame over that. My mistake personally was that I framed it out and didn't plywood it over. That was on me personally. I did not realize that there was a requirement to get a special permit for the 3rd bay. All on me. It has nothing to do with my company or any of or the homeowners. I was ignorant of that fact. No excuse for that. And I was allowed to frame out. I was allowed to have the drops. I went ahead and added the trim and left the opening there. That's on me. And that was discovered that I realized we needed a special zoning permit from you people. Then we applied.
Sir, did you sign the permit? Did
I'm
you
sorry?
application for the permit? Or did
One
the
more time.
contractor?
Did you sign the permit?
I did not sign the permit application.
The contractor did, right?
Correct.
And he's a licensed contractor in the town, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Scott. All right, anything else from the board? All right. We would need a motion then?
Mr. Chair, I need an opportunity to discuss this with my client before you proceed, because I don't want this to be denied. And it's clear that as of right now, we have 3 votes that are not positive for this. I'm not sure what we can do to make this right beyond what we've offered to the board. We've provided all the information that we can. I think that I understand that the board is upset with the way this played out. That is very clear. That is not the fault of the applicant and the owner. It is clear that this is not how any permits of this nature to proceed, whether it be a 3-car garage or something else. But I think that while the contractor made a mistake, and the project manager who's here, Mr. Cabral, was very clear in saying that it was his mistake, it was not the applicant's mistake. And I think in an effort to punish the contractor, the homeowner is the one who does suffer for this. This is, I think, a very easily approvable project. I think had this not been the sequencing, I think this board would have very few qualms about issuing the special permit. And I think that this could certainly be approved, and it's understood and clear how things are to happen moving forward. And I just don't want to see the homeowner punished for something that they didn't choose to do or have any idea about. But if the board is not inclined to approve it, I'm going to have it. I'd like an opportunity to at least discuss with my client what his options are, what their options are, and how they want to proceed.
All right, so in effect, you'd be asking for a continuation?
Unless Mr. Foreman, Mr. Dugan, or Mr. Zielinski are willing to reconsider where they are right now, I think I need to.
All right, so just with the one caveat, I mean, if the board has everything that we have to make a decision, we could potentially close the hearing and then vote upon this tonight. Just so everyone understands that. The board is, you got the consensus of the board, we're not leaning toward approving it.
I'm certainly willing to grant a continuance so that Attorney Clower can confer with his client. I'm not.
I'll second Mr. Foreman's motion to, if they want a continuance, I'm all right with that too.
Very
So
good.
that would be to,
We'll just defer to Noreen in terms of the schedule.
So you have 40 Bs scheduled on both of the next meeting nights. So I would suggest December 10th.
okay, I would make that motion to continue to December.
All right, and Scott.
Again,
you're
I'll
second?
second it.
Very good. All right, so motion made by Ken and seconded by Scott to continue this hearing to December 10th. Roll call vote. Ed?
Ed Van Kuren, aye.
Bob?
Robert Dugan, aye.
Scott?
Scott Zelinski, aye.
Ken?
Ken Forman, aye.
And TJ Hurry, aye. So that hearing is continued to December 10th. Attorney Clara, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. We certainly appreciate it.
Up next, we have, moving on to our new hearings, we have application 52-20 Spectre, 15 Prospect Street in Falmouth.
So application number 52-20, being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 48 of the Mass General Laws, you are hereby notified that Richard D. and Janet R. Spectre of Northbridge, Mass. have applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Sections 240-3C and 240-69E of the Code of Falmouth to construct a second-floor addition, increasing lot coverage by structures on subject property known as 15 Prospect Street, Falmouth, Mass. For referrals. Engineering. This application was reviewed for impacts to public rights of way and public utilities. Prospect Street is a public right of way in this area. No alterations are proposed to the right of way. Any changes within the right of way would require filing a permit with the engineering division. 2, any connections or alterations to public utilities would require permission from the appropriate town department. 3, project must not direct any stormwater runoff to public property, abutters, or public rights of way. 4, we recommend the board add a condition to require the addition of dry wells or other stormwater infiltration measures. 5, we recommend the following be used in any approval: that upon completion of construction, the applicant shall post the address for this residence per section 99-1, affixing of legible numbers required and time limit for compliance. Planning, no comment. Conservation, no comment. It's outside of their jurisdiction. Water Department, the water service to the residents is 3/4 copper. It is recommended to upgrade the service to 1 inch. Without upgrading, there may be water pressure issues. Health Department, the Board of Health in 1998 issued a local upgrade approval variance to construct a 3-bedroom septic system on the property and limited the home's bedroom count to a max of 3. The proposed plan submitted show 3 bedrooms, so Health has no issues with this project. Assessors, no comment. And Fire Department has no issues. There was one letter submitted by a Jim McCarty of 48 Prospect Street. And it says, regarding the public hearing tonight, I'm sorry for the last minute nature of this message to you. I didn't receive notice of this hearing from you and just heard about it from a neighbor. I am unable to attend this hearing online tomorrow, yet wish to be heard. I can support the project described in this application only if street parking on this very precarious corner can be contained. It's already well out of control, potentially interfering with ambulance or fire truck passage, not to mention the vehicle and pedestrian safety passage issue that already exists. It's not uncommon to find 3 to 4 cars parked in front of the house on the street, in addition to the 3 to 4 in the driveway, which potentially adding more cars to that frightens me even more. The street was not designed for street parking at all. And I'm sure Mr. Clower will respond to that. He does have a response in the file. And that's all we have. And there was a law comparison worksheet provided. I think everyone has a copy.
Thank you, Bob. And the voting members on this are the regular voting members. And again, if anyone out there, members of the public, have any question, comment, or concern regarding this project, you can type it into the webinar chat using your full name and address. We will get to it shortly. And the representative for this project again is Attorney Clower.
Good evening again, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth, and I represent the applicants, Richard and Janet Spectre, the owners of 15 Prospect Street. If I could ask if we could elevate Greg Sarunian as a presenter as well. And the applicants, the Spectres, are seeking permission for an addition to their home, which is the creation of a second floor. 15 Prospect Street is located just off of Walker Street, South Main. It's on a lot of 4,967 square feet, and it's located in the residential C zoning district. Presently, there's a two-bedroom dwelling with a footprint of 1,142 square feet. It's non-conforming in a few ways. It's non-conforming to front yard setback, being 19 feet where 25 is required, to the rear yard setback, being 3.9 feet where 10 is required, and the lot coverage by structures, being 23% where 20 is allowed by right and 25 is allowed by special permit. Relative to the rear yard setback, it is worth noting that the applicants have the benefit of an easement over the abutting parcel behind them. They've owned this house for about 4 years and like many right now, are seeking to make it their full-time residence. And as such, they're trying to improve the space, make it more useful and more comfortable. They propose creating a second floor, which will allow for reconfiguration of other space on the first floor. What separates this from other similar applications that we've seen is that they intend, at the direction of their architect, to independently support that second floor. They're going to add new beams and columns to the exterior of the house in order to do so. This will have a very minimal effect on the footprint, adding only 85 square feet. The lot coverage by structure will increase slightly from 23% to 24.7% with the issuance of a special permit under 240-69E. That nonconformity is eliminated. There's no increase or change to the nonconforming front or rear yard setbacks. The bedrooms will increase to 3, but as noted in the referral from the health department, the home has a 3-bedroom system. 243C allows for pre-existing non-conforming structures to be changed by special permit, provided they're not substantially more detrimental than what exists. The board is asked to consider the standards of 240-216 and whether or not that alteration creates a new dimensional nonconformity, impairs views and vistas from public ways, and reasonably conforms to the neighborhood. Here, there's no new nonconformity created. The existing nonconforming setbacks are unaffected. The lot coverage by structure, though increasing, isn't eliminated as a nonconformity with the issuance of a special permit, and there's no impact to views and vistas. Further, in residential C zoning, lot coverage by structure exceeding 20% requires a special permit under 240-69E. In that case, the board's asked to consider the size and height of the structure relative to the average size and height of structures in the neighborhood, the effects of shadow on adjacent properties, the impact on views and vistas from public ways, and the effect on the coastal embayment, effect of nitrogen rather on the coastal embayment. Here, there's no impact to views and vistas from public ways. There shouldn't be any significant impact on shadow, and there's no effect on nitrogen on the embayments because the system again is designed for 3 bedrooms, which it will have. As to the size and height of the structures, we did submit a lot comparison worksheet, looking at 45 homes within a 300-foot radius of this property. Of those homes, 37 have larger footprints. 37 of 45 have larger footprints, and 40 out of 45 have larger gross building areas. Even as proposed, this will remain one of the smaller and more modest homes in the neighborhood. I was, in fact, alerted to the correspondence by the nearby neighbor objecting to cars on the street. I discussed this with my clients that was pretty vehemently informed that with about 2 to 3 exceptions, all of which they could specifically identify, they park only in their driveway, which does accommodate 4 cars. There are some nearby houses that rent out on a regular basis, and they do generate more cars in parking, but that's not the cause by or the fault of the applicants. This project represents a significant improvement over the existing conditions and will be much more useful for the applicants. It meets the standards of 243C, 240-69E, and 216. For these reasons and for these considerations, I would ask that this board grant the special permit. I'll be happy to address any questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you, Attorney Clower. And once again, if there's anyone out there who has a question, comment, or concern regarding this project, type it into the webinar chat using your full name and address, and we will address it shortly. As for board questions, Ed, anything?
This time.
Thank you, Ed. Bob?
Yeah, just a question on the septic, and I know it's a 3-bedroom and there's a restriction for the 3 bedrooms. Are those H20 tanks, or are they just regular tanks?
That I don't know.
And I'm just only asking that question because I assume if they're doing construction here, if they're not H20, they'd have to keep all the equipment off that entire section of the property. My other question is, and I don't think it was brought up by help because they weren't there, but the placement of your support beam on the front of the house, on the support pillar on the right-hand side in front is directly where there's currently a vent pipe for the septic system. I've actually never seen a vent pipe set so close to a house before. How is that going to be addressed?
Mr. Chairman, can I speak? It's Greg Cerny, the architect, Rescom Architectural. So we had some discussions with Holmes and McGrath, the site engineers, as relates to the column placement within the septic. That was taken off the as-built. And as we had discussed it, we had told Tim that if we needed to adjust that post column, we could when we're in the field.
So was that discussion at all also with the health department, so they're aware of it?
I don't know if Tim had any discussions. I know he had some early concerns whether, the post was going to have any interference with the septic. I do not know if he had any final conversations, but that post can be moved. It's not critical that it be in that exact location. We can avoid that or possibly move the vent pipe, whatever seems to be the most appropriate.
That's all I have right now.
Scott? Nope, you're muted, Scott.
Mr. Cerrone, is the septic in compliance with all the setback requirements for Mass Title V?
I believe so. I don't have that plan in front of me. Kevin, did they show that on the site plan?
The site plan reflects the as-built taken off the from the town records. I don't know that they've located it directly, or rather than just taking it off the town records. It was built pursuant to an approval from the Board of Health in 1998.
So, Mr. Cobb, because that was a variance.
20 feet off.
Yeah.
Septic field.
I suspect it does not meet Title V requirements. It was likely built pursuant to a variance.
Say that again?
It was likely built pursuant to a variance, and I think the Board of Health referral, the Board of Health referral does refer to a local upgrade approval / variance to construct a 3-bedroom septic system on the property. So it probably does not meet those Title V requirements, but is built pursuant to a variance under the idea of maximum feasible compliance.
So you're not seeking a variance for that
No.
as part of this permit?
No.
Okay.
So a quick follow-up to that. If the septic system was done.
Oh,
Right.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Scott.
I just have one more question. I don't know who's going to answer this, but how, if this is approved, how are we going to address the construction? Do you guys have any plans to how you're going to address the construction equipment and the parking and all of that as part of this this construction project? Being that we already know that we can't park on the septic field because we don't know whether it's a Title H20, and we don't want to park on the street. Does anybody have a plan for this?
Well, again, Greg Cernian, Rescom Architectural. While the construction is being done, obviously the owners won't be there. They won't be living in the house. So I think we would just need to have some restrictions that the contractor pay attention to that. I do believe he does have some room in front of the house that he could park. The septic system is off to the side. So there is enough room, I believe, in front of the house and not to be on the property.
Because I hate to continue to beat the dead horse about H10 septic systems, but if, would you agree that there'd be a problem?
We
with-
typically recommend that they get staked with snow fencing so that people can't drive over them. That is a pretty standard that we recommend.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. I interrupted. The question
did.
again was because the septic was a variance, is relocating the vent pipe, does that have to be reflected now in the variance that was permitted previously?
I don't know, but again, we have the ability to move the move the post as well if we need to.
Anything else, Bob? No? Ken?
Just along the lines of that variance, I'm just, since there are no discrete setback lines shown on the plan, you're extending, if I'm understanding the plan correctly, you're extending the front of the house out about 2 feet. Is that correct?
Only on the second floor. So again, this whole issue is,
Oh, all right. So it's a gambrel type structure?
it's like a garrison. The problem is this is a block foundation. We had the homeowners hire a contractor to excavate so we could see if there's footings. It's a very common problem with some of these older homes.
Right.
And it gets very expensive to excavate under and add footings. We've done this design successfully many times before, where we take the load off those walls and we provide a new load path on the exterior, similar to like building a deck. And all we're gonna have is some sonotube footings with some posts that get wrapped decoratively. And that's on both sides, front and back. So if we didn't need to do it, if it wasn't for that reason, there's plenty of room within the house to actually achieve this within the existing footprint. It's just that we need to be able to pick this thing up structurally.
And Mr. Foreman, to follow up on that, the front of the house doesn't come any closer than the existing forwardmost portion of the house.
Right, I get that. So when I look at your architectural, these little black blocks are the supports around the outside perimeter.
Correct. Then on either side of the vestibule, we're just kind of fattening the exterior wall of the vestibule to bury a support inside.
Oh, right, I see that. Yep, okay. All right, I think I understand now. Thank you.
Okay. And I had concerns about the septic and about the general parking during construction, but I think that was already addressed by Bob. And all right. Mary or James, do you guys have any questions?
I have no questions.
None. Okay. All right. I am not seeing any public comment. Does the board have any follow-up questions?
No, I'd like some follow-up information. I don't know if we can get it tonight. I'd like information from the health department because this was a variance that's recorded with a restriction on bedrooms. Is changing anything regarding that vent pipe effective variance or not? And it's, just an oversight. I just don't think health realized there was a vent pipe there. It should be easy enough to find out. And the other thing is because of the comment on the street regarding the parking, even though in this case, you did say that these owners weren't the ones doing the parking. There are no parking signs posted on the entire street, but I think where this lot is and the septic takes up the whole right-hand side, they would have to demarcate the entire septic field, and you would really need some kind of a management plan on how they are going to handle the parking for the construction. It's just extremely tight, and they probably can. I don't know what kind of equipment they need to bring in or not, but like something from the contractor that shows that how they can handle this, not using the street and not using that right-hand side that deals with the septic system.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Scott.
in response to what Bob just said, I don't think it's a big deal. I think that they'll be able to move the vent. The vent just goes into, with approval of someone else, the health department, Bob, but they'd have to tie into one of the other chambers and go out to the property line or out back or whatever. I don't think that's the venting part of that isn't a big deal. If it had to be changed, I don't know if it fits under the variance. That's a very good question that I don't know the answer to, but I know in the past, I was just, I was surprised that it was right there under the window against the house. I've very, very, very rarely ever seen that, only one other. So I have questions about it too, but in the event that it has to be moved structurally, it doesn't hurt the system. Thank
No,
you.
I understand structurally. My word was the same thing, is that usually when a variance is given, they're extremely specific and they're recorded, and
Oh, and that's
if
why
that
I
was-
asked.
yeah. And if it was left off the plan, I know there was a mention that they weren't aware it was there. They're gonna have to update the plan and the recording.
Right.
And I know that would have to go in front of the, as far as I know, not the health agent, the health board.
Well,
Because it's a
either,
variance.
either way, structurally, on paper, if they, you know, under a variance, that's one thing. I'm just saying structurally, in the event that that was all cleared up, I don't think it would be a big deal to move that unless it was written into that special permit. That's all. They wouldn't have to redo the septic, is what I'm saying for that.
I also believe we can move our post if we need to avoid that.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Is it possible to approve this with conditions that, the location of the vent will be verified with the Board of Health? And two, as part of the building permit application, that we submit a parking plan?
Let's see. Bob, were Scott's points, did they clarify
no,
the
I-
issues you had, or?
I think we can handle some of this with the board, conditioning with the Board of Health, as long as we mention that, you have to make findings for all of this, that there is a variance, that there's a vent pipe that's not showing up, that it is at the foundation. If the posts at that point have to be moved, do they have to submit a new plan here? Because now it's a different plan. That's why I'm wondering, I think we
Well,
could get this
again,
information pretty quick. Could we do a continuation just to the next meeting? It shouldn't be hard to get the information together. I don't think they have to wait long term.
Attorney
I mean,
Clower,
that certainly is a question that needs to be answered, and I don't think it can be conditioned, because it could change the whole scope of the decision, right?
Just to be clear, Mr. Zelinski, is that the question regarding the vent?
It's a question on the variance, how the variance written up, is that vent and that plan, the way it's set up, because it's not compliant, change the compliancy of it and change the permit.
So I think that, finding the variance, obtaining a copy of the variance is easy enough. I'd be surprised if the vent was part of that variance. If it was, as Greg has mentioned, we can shift that column slightly, or we could seek to amend the variance. Either way, I think would be fine. I think that a shift of the column is certainly something that would fall under an administrative change and could be done pretty quickly, since we're not changing the nature of the application. It's really just a shift of the location. That said, I don't think that would be necessary, just based on having read a lot of health department variances over the years.
okay. So Bob, would you still want that continuance to get that information, or?
Well, I just because it said variance, and I don't want to hold them long term. That's why I was wondering if we could just do it at our next meeting, get it. I think the other thing is the parking is an issue down there. I would like to just see a plan of how they're going to stage this. You physically, the way the signs are in the street, you physically cannot park anything on that street. They're town posted signs. People posted in the fast. It's a quick move, and because they did a variance for this system to fit it on the lot, and it's good they fit it all on one side, you basically can't use the entire right-hand side of that lot. If you're off of the septic on the street side, you're in the street. So they need to put some kind of plan showing that they can stage this in just the driveway and the front yard.
I agree on the parking.
The property is uniquely situated there, and it is a tight spot with the street.
And
You know,
there, you
if
know,
we-
there needs to be some limitation on number of vehicles.
So if we could continue it to the next meeting, just to get the information on, from the health department and also get a plan submitted, Mr. Cloud could submit a plan from the contractor showing what equipment would be required and how they're gonna be managing it on site so that it does not stay in the roadways. When it does not use that, you know, the site that's demarcated for the septic system.
Today, there was cars parked on the street farther down. In the middle of the day today. You're gonna have cars in the street no matter what.
Yeah, I took a drive over myself today just because I woke up in a cold sweat hoping that it had been staked and wanted to just confirm. And I did notice that myself, and you know, I think that is a problem that is endemic to the area. But you know, again, I think we can address that with a fairly simple plan, whether it be part of a condition or presented at the next hearing.
All right. And Noreen, what's the next date?
Right, so you could put it on the 19th if you promise to be efficient with the time.
Gonna be quick.
Yeah,
I
because
talk
you,
quick.
you do have two 40Bs that night as well. So,
Yeah, it'll
you know,
be-
I mean-
if you're just finalizing, I think that's fine.
Yeah, it should be pretty simple. We're just looking at two things and
All right. Would anyone like to make that motion then?
I will move that we continue this until, Maureen, what did you say the date was? 19th?
November 19th.
November 19th, right here in Zoom Hall.
I'll second.
Very good. So the motion to continue to November 19th, made by Ken, seconded by Bob. Roll call vote. Ed,
Ed Van Kuren, I.
Bob,
Robert Dugan, aye.
Ken,
Ken Forman, aye?
Scott,
Scott Zelinski, aye.
and TJ Hurry, aye. So it passes unanimously. This hearing is continued to November 19th. Attorney Clower and Mr. Serunian, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it greatly.
Okay, up next, we have application 53-20, Rocklin Trust Company, 397 East Falmouth Highway in East Falmouth. And we have for the applicant, Mr. John Cavarna. And Bob, go ahead and you can read that into the record.
So application number 53-20. Being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 48 of the Mass General Laws, you are hereby notified that Rocklin Trust Company of Rocklin, Mass. has applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Sections 240-67A and 240-3C of the Code of Falmouth to construct an addition to the existing building, replace the existing canopy and single-lane drive-through with a two-lane drive-through on subject property known as 397 East Falmouth Highway, East Falmouth, Mass. From engineering. The application was reviewed for impacts to public rights of way and public utilities. East Falmouth Highway is a Mass DOT right of way in this area, and Davisville Road is a public right of way in this area. No alterations are proposed to the right of way. Any changes within the right of way would require filing a permit with the engineering division or Mass DOT. Any connections or alterations to public utilities would require permission from the appropriate town department. The project must not direct any stormwater runoff to public property, abutters, or public rights of way. They do recommend that all roofs go to dry wells, regardless if the project is reducing the amount of impervious surface. And they also recommend that the board add a condition that requires the addition of those dry wells or other stormwater infiltration measures at a minimum. Water Department, no comment. Conservation has no comment on the project. It's outside of jurisdiction. Assessors. It says in 2013, there was a road taking of 1,308 square feet for state highway. That's book 27738, page 1. And that's coming from Tricia Vivuli, the Director of Assessing. And that's it for the referrals.
All right, thank you, Bob. And the voting members on this are the regular voting members. And if anyone out there has a question, comment, or concern regarding the project, you can type it into the webinar chat using your full name and address. We will address it shortly. And for the applicant, we have Mr. John Governor.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Cavanero from Cavanero Consulting in Norwell, Massachusetts, and I'm here this evening with, I expect, Stephen Carroll, the Senior Vice President from Rocklin Trust, who's the Director of Corporate Services, as well as Jerry Blake, Registered Architect from New Phase Design. So I'm not sure if they're out there, if they could be elevated to panelists, that would be great for any questions that may come up.
I think they are on the attendees list, if we could get them elevated.
So as you mentioned in the introduction, Rocklin Trust would like to do really three separate things with this project. They're in front of you this evening because the lot is non-conforming due to size. It has less than required frontage along East Falmouth Highway, adequate frontage on Davisville, and it has an adequate lot width. The building itself is compliant with respect to building setbacks. It's well under the building lot coverage, but the total lot coverage is also in excess of the allowable 70%. The proposal includes really two building improvements and then one site improvement in order to bring the property into conformance with respect to total lot coverage. So the addition to the rear of the building is essentially to close in an area that's notched off in the footprint, and that's in order to add a couple of offices. It'll be constructed on a slab foundation, and that will be well within the building setbacks, as it's not getting any closer to the property lines as what the current building is today. The second piece is to rebuild the drive-through area. Right now, it's currently a single lane drive-up. They'd like to make it a 2-lane by adding an island and a canopy over both drive-up lanes. Then the third piece is to, as I mentioned, to bring the site into conformance with respect to lot coverage. Right now, it's about 75% covered with impervious surfaces. The applicant is encouraged to reduce the amount of impervious to bring it at or below the 70% lot coverage. So we're proposing to reduce about 1,600 square feet of pavement on the property. And that's because we have an excess of parking spaces for the existing use. We have more than adequate spaces. So essentially the use is not changing. We're not increasing any nonconformities that exist. There's nothing we can do about lot width and lot size, of course. We did stake out the proposed work in the lot, and when we were doing so, we did pick up some modifications that have happened to the site since we did the original survey out here several years ago, since the improvements with the East Falmouth Highway work from Mass Highway were done. And one of those things we did pick up the taking on the corner of Davisville and East Falmouth Highway. So that's something that we also noticed. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions. As I mentioned, Jerry, the project architect, is here, as well as Stephen Carroll.
Okay, thank you. And again, if anyone out there in the public has a question, comment, or concern regarding the project, go ahead and type it into the webinar chat using your full name and address, and we will get to it shortly. As for board questions, we'll see if there are any. Ed, do you have anything?
Yes, they have to the right from the looking at the where the two new lanes are for the window servers. There's a guy wire coming down from pole there, it looks like it's in the way. Is that gonna have to be relocated?
That will need to get relocated. Yes. It's pretty close to the widening of the driveway. It's a private pole for the current service, but that will need to get adjusted.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Ed. Bob?
No, I don't have any questions. I think it's a nice plan.
Ken?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Scott?
Just a quick one. The electric service going in over the canopy, is that going to be cleaned up at all, or is that going to stay right where it is?
Jerry, would you like to address that?
Yeah, if it's in conflict with the canopy work, of course, we would have to relocate it, think about that going in. We'll definitely dig into that, and they'll make an improvement. It'll have to be improved as part of the exterior renovations to make way for the new siding and so forth, so.
And it must have some added insulation and everything else. Is the canopy, it's wood, isn't it?
Correct, with a steel subframe.
Right. So this, obviously in the design, there's some kind of insulation because it gets pretty close to that connection as
Yep.
it now, so.
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you, Scott. James, do you have anything? All right. And Mary, anything?
No, I don't.
Thank you, Mary. So with the second proposed lane, that essentially blocks off any sort of independent lane of travel on that side of the site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's plenty of access throughout the site. There are multiple openings. There's access obviously from East Falmouth as well as entrance and exits from Davisville. Lots of circulation throughout the site as well. Somewhat blessed with the size, which actually creates that nonconformity to lot coverage. So we're able to remedy that and still provide adequate access throughout the site.
Of course. I'm pretty familiar with this site, living in the area. I also know that intersection is used for people, unfortunately, to cut through depending on the color of the light. Is there any signage proposed saying no entry on? Well, it's tough to say. Basically, on the corner of East Falmouth Highway and Davisville, so coming toward.
Yes, there
the
actually
house
is.
proposed?
There actually is do not enter signs there today. That's striped exit only.
Very good. All right. Any other follow-up questions from the board? Seeing none, and there are no public comments in the webinar chat. How would the board like to proceed?
Make a motion to close?
Okay, motion to close by
Second.
Scott and seconded by Ed. Roll call vote. Ed?
Ed Van Kuren, aye.
Bob?
Robert Dugan, aye.
Ken?
And Foreman, aye.
Scott?
John Zelinski, aye.
And TJ Hurry, aye. So the hearing is closed.
Thank you
How would
very
the board-
much.
Thank you. And how would the board like to proceed?
Motion to approve with conditions?
I'll second it.
Motion approved by Bob and seconded by Scott. Bob, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, so 240-67A, 240-3C, 240-216. Not substantially more detrimental. It does increase the utilization. They're doing a 330 square foot addition to the bank, along with adding a second drive-through lane and canopy. They'll be removing 5 parking spaces, replaced with landscaping. They have an excess in parking, so that will not have any effect on the plan.
Reduces the nonconformity.
Yeah, it reduces the nonconformity and reduces the pavement by about 1,600 square feet. You know, I guess I'd also put in the finding that the addition of these landscaped areas are going to make a big aesthetic effect on the building in that corner. That corner of Davisville and East Falmouth Highway has done a big beautification change in the last couple of years, and this will be a complement to that.
Absolutely. Anything else for findings, Bob?
No, I think that's it.
All right. How about conditions?
Per plans, adding engineering's condition on the dry wells for runoff.
Ed's guide wire move.
Yeah, Ed's guide wire move. They have signage on the plan, so that's okay. It's already on the plan.
As per plan is pretty simple on this one.
Yeah, they did a nice
There
job.
is.
And there's really no conditions. I mean,
No,
mandatory. It's kind of a simple project.
Do you want anything added or changed on the plan if they do move the electrical or the wire? Do you want that reflected on the plan or no?
yeah, we should reflect it on the plan if they change it.
All right. Anything else?
I'm good.
That's it.
Very good. All right. So that was a motion to approve with conditions made by Bob and seconded by Scott. We'll do a roll call vote once again. Ed,
Ed Van Kuren, aye.
Bob,
Robert Dugan, aye.
Ken,
And Foreman, aye.
Scott,
Scott Zelinski, aye.
and TJ Hurry, aye. So the it passes unanimously with conditions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
So, Mr. Chair, could we take a 5-minute before the next hearing?
I was just going to suggest that myself. All right. We will take a quick 5-minute break and we will be back shortly. We have application 55-20 RLBE LLC, Rebecca Ann Lane, Lot 2 in East Falmouth.
So application number 55-20. Being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 40A of the Mass General Laws, you are hereby notified that RLBE LLC of East Falmouth, Mass. has applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a comprehensive permit pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B, to construct 5 duplex buildings totaling 10 units. 3 units will be affordable. The subject property is Rebecca Ann Lane, Lot 2, East Falmouth, Mass.
Mr. Chairman, I need to make a declaration.
Sure, go ahead, Scott.
As you know, when I was a private citizen and not a member of this board, I spoke out against one of this applicant projects. And he is also a prospective member of a private club, which I am a committee chair on. But as you know, I look at every case on an individual basis, and I feel like I can sit and assess this hearing in a fair and non-biased manner.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Scott.
Okay, I'll go ahead with the referrals. Okay, this is from the Affordable Housing Committee. It says the following are comments and concerns from the Affordable Housing Committee about the above 40B project. A few days ahead of our deadline, we will turn next to the other one. Okay, so number one, this 10 apartment development meets a very high priority from our housing production plan. Example, 1 and 2 bedroom rental units, all of which will count on Falmouth subsidized housing inventory, and 3 of which will be restricted in perpetuity, the renters earning up to 80% of the AMI. The location is ideal for this sort of housing, close to stores, services, and bus routes. Mass Housing will serve as the 40B monitoring agent. 2, the project consists of 5 duplexes, each of which includes 1,560 square feet of living space. Our primary concern regards the building that includes the 1 3-bedroom unit, along with one of the 2 affordable 1-bedroom units. A layout that makes perfect sense in the duplexes that combine 2 2-bedroom units or 2 1-bedroom units is poorly designed for the 3-bedroom and 1-bedroom combination for the following reasons. A, the 3rd bedroom intrudes into the 1-bedroom unit, resulting in problems for both apartments. B, in the larger unit, the 3rd bedroom has no windows and is surrounded by noisy parts of the smaller unit. For example, the entrance hall, living room, and laundry room. C, the entrance hall in the smaller unit is at a right angle to the front door. It leads directly to the bathroom, and it probably renders the unit unvisitable. Please reconsider the design and layout of this 1 duplex, or ask for an exception to the need to include a 3-bedroom unit in the development. 3, the rent for each of the 2 affordable 1-bedroom units is listed as $1,223 per month, yet there are 2 very different designs for these units, and one of them is 780 square feet, while the other is 18% smaller at only 638 square feet. Surely the people in the smaller and poorly designed affordable 1-bedroom unit should pay less rent than the people in the larger and better designed affordable 1-bedroom unit. Also, in the interest of 40B equitability, all 3 of the 1-bedroom units should be roughly the same size and layout, whether they are to be rented at the market rate or the affordable rate. Again, getting rid of the 3-bedroom market rate unit and replacing it with another 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom market rate unit would solve both of these problems. Alternatively, if the current planned unit sizes and designs cannot be changed, the developer should consider expanding the outside hardscape patio of the 638 square foot 1-bedroom unit, or adding some other feature or amenities to make up for the interior discrepancies. 4, we support the town's request to build all 10 units to meet the stretch code, thus reducing the ongoing cost of energy and helping the 80% AMI renters. On a related point, there is a reference to a monthly affordable housing utility allowance of $150 for a 1-bedroom unit and $176 for the 2-bedroom unit. What does this mean? What exactly is a utility allowance? Do the various rental rates that are quoted include utility costs, or do they not? And 5, finally, please identify who will be the lottery agent for the 3 affordable units, and also who will serve as the property manager for all 10 of the units. Please explain how maintenance and similar issues will be handled. This is from engineering. And it begins with listing all the documents that they reviewed, that they looked at. Says, due to the complexity and scale of this project, we request that the project be referred for review by an outside consultant. We also recommend that the outside consultant be retained for any inspections and construction oversight if required in any approval of this project. Below are our general comments. A more in-depth review of the project is required. 1, sewage. An on-site sewage disposal system with a design flow of 1,980 gallons per day is proposed for the development. We defer to the health department if this system should be part of the outside consultant review. This site is mapped with the Bourne Pond Coastal Pond Overlay District. However, it is located outside the high-quality areas, stabilization areas, and intensive water activity areas. The project should be reviewed for compliance with any applicable requirements under Article 21 Coastal Pond Overlay District. Water. Sheet 4 of 6 is titled Site Plan Septic/Water. However, water services to the units is not shown on the plan we reviewed. We defer to the water department if the system design should be part of the outside consultant review. Parking and access. The project includes 2 parking spaces, each unit plus 2 extra, which we assume is intended for visitor parking. Signs indicating visitor parking are recommended. It has been suggested that the applicant consider individual driveways for each building to blend in better with the surrounding parcels. The applicant indicates that in addition to their feeling that multiple curb cuts would not be attractive or practical, they also lack control of a small parcel to the northeast of the project parcel that prevents change to individual driveways. This parcel does not appear to prevent redesigning of individual driveways for buildings 1 to 3 and a shared driveway for buildings 4 and 5 at a minimum, and potentially individual driveways for 4 and 5 as well. Note that individual driveways could provide additional areas for visitors to park near whichever units they are visiting as opposed to the current configuration where the parking is located in one area. Also, cars parked in an individual driveway differs from cars parked in driveways, aisles for current configuration, which is likely if the visitor spaces are full. We defer to the Zoning Board of Appeals if alternate layout should be explored. What other configurations were considered for the layout of the buildings and the parking? Could the buildings be pulled closer to the street to provide more backyard space? Has combining buildings into triplexes or quads been explored? Less buildings could provide more open space and different driveway configurations. Has the applicant considered a loop driveway? The current configuration would require trash trucks, delivery vehicles, etc., to back out of either wing of the driveway as proposed. We defer to the Zoning Board of Appeals to alternate layout should be explored. We defer to the Falmouth Fire and Rescue as to emergency vehicle access and maneuvering within the site. Has the applicant considered relocating the visitor parking spaces to the front of the development and relocating Building 5 closer to Building 4? Maneuvering out of spaces numbered 17 and 18 appear to be tight and as stated above. These spaces are not close to the buildings 1 and 3, which would encourage parking in the drive aisles opposite the units being visited. Rebecca Ann Lane is a private right-of-way in this area, therefore no driveway permit application or street opening permit would be required to access this site from the road. For informational purposes only, Rebecca Ann Lane has a petition in the town for roadway acceptance as a public right-of-way. The petition does not have the required 51% abutter signatures, so it is not a complete petition, and there may be issues with the fee for the road apparently owned privately. Will there be a Cardinal Place sign for the development? Grading and drainage. Separation between the stormwater leaching area and the subsurface sewage disposal area should be labeled on the plans and reviewed for conformance. See additional comments on the drainage map and calculations which they've included below. Site plan sheet 1, existing conditions. Will the encroachments of number 11 and number 17 Timothy Bourne Cartway be removed? Do the sheds encroach? The site plans do not indicate that encroachments will be removed, but what is shown in the landscape plan appears to be in conflict with those encroachments. Where is the fence for number 26 Rebecca Ann Lane in relation to the property line? Site plan sheet 2, layout. A portion of the proposed retaining wall near the proposed dumpster appears to be located within the roadway layout for Rebecca Ann Lane. The building and unit designation match what was previously discussed. The address for the parcel will be an even number between 6 and 24. The addresses will be assigned prior to issuance of a building permit. We recommend that the distance between buildings be added to the plans. There appears to be limited space for snow storage. What is the plan for snow removal? It might help the zoning board of appeals in their decision process if the bedroom counts and affordable units are labeled on the plan. We defer to the board. Site plan sheet 3, grading and drainage. We recommend that either downspout piping be shown on the plan connecting all roofs to the proposed dry wells, or note be added indicating that all roof areas will discharge to dry wells. The separation distance from the bottom of the stormwater leaching structures to the seasonal high groundwater should be determined and reviewed by an outside consultant. Site plan sheet 4, septic/water. The title of this sheet indicates that this plan shows septic system and water system. However, no water information is shown on the plan. Site plan sheet 5, soil erosion and sediment control plan. We recommend that the outside consultant review the plan for conformance to the attached soil erosion and sediment control standard conditions. Existing off-site downstream stormwater structures should be protected during construction and until vegetation has been established and erosion minimized. We request that the outside consultant be assigned inspections for the conformance to the final erosion and sediment control plan during construction. Landscape plan. With the encroachment areas and the proposed privacy fencing a minimum 1 foot off the property line, what is the 6-foot vegetation buffer? The yard encroachments leaves no existing buffering vegetation in these areas. Is something being proposed? Drainage map and drainage calculations. The calculations include exfiltration through the bottom of the leaching structures. We typically only account for exfiltration through the side area. The outside consultant should confirm that all stormwater is maintained on site. Application. The building configurations described in the narrative description section should be shown on the plans. For example, Building 4 Unit B is the 3-bedroom market rate unit. This could be indicated on the layout plan. The plans show a portion of a proposed retaining wall located within Rebecca Ann Lane right-of-way, the fee for which is owned by John Drewley, who has provided an access right-of-way and utility easement for this project included in the application. Is the retaining wall an allowed use under this agreement? Note that the concept plan in Exhibit A does not show the retaining wall. We defer to the applicant's lawyer or town council. Architectural plans. The title block on these plans indicate that there are 7 sheets to this set. However, there were only 5 sheets supplied. This should be clarified, and if applicable, the additional sheet should be submitted. The sheet number appears to be incorrect. There are 3 sheets designated 4 of 7. This should be clarified, and if applicable, the plan set should be updated and then resubmitted. It isn't clear if the 3-bedroom/1-bedroom configuration meets firewall requirements for the 3rd bedroom that sticks out into the 1-bedroom unit. The double wall shown between the other units does not continue to the shared wall in this bedroom. We defer to the Falmouth Fire Rescue Department what requirements there are and how these will be met in the final building permit plans. We defer to the Health Department if the rooms labeled office do not meet the definition of a bedroom and what restrictions may be required in rental agreements to prevent these from being converted into bedrooms. General, the outside consultant should review the plans and documents to see if all comments made by the town manager and town departments are addressed satisfactorily. This review is preliminary in nature, with the purpose of aiding an outside consultant in a full review as requested by us. If the project is not referred to an outside consultant for review, we request that the Zoning Board of Appeals refer the project back to engineering for a full review. Should this go out for review by an outside consultant, we are available to go over our comments. There's an attachment of the soil erosion and sediment control standards and conditions. Conservation staff has no comments on the proposal since the project is outside of conservation jurisdiction. This is from Carla Ferroni, housing coordinator. This development includes 10 rental units and 5 duplexes. The development meets the minimum requirement that 25% of the unit be affordable. The mix of housing type aligns well with the town's housing needs as identified in the 2018 Housing Production Plan. The HPP states that the greatest need is for rental housing, with the most significant need being 1 and 2 bedrooms. None of these units are listed as visitable or accessible, and the town should request visitability for all units and accessibility for at least 1. The project is located close to Route 28 and is accessible to public transportation. There is also a market nearby. The development will require a local monitoring agent, though none are currently listed. And then no comment from assessing. And that's all we have at this time.
Thank you, Bob. And I know that Scott made his disclosure, and I'm fine with him sitting on it. Ed, will you be recusing yourself from this application?
I think I can be objective, but I don't want to muck up anything. It's up to you. What do you think?
All right. I think it might be best if you sit this one out. And that's no.
Okay, I'll set it up.
All right. All right. So then I will appoint Mary to this. The voting members on this application will be myself, Mary, Bob, Ken, and Scott. And if there are any members of the public wishing to have any question, comment, or concern, you can put it into the webinar chat using your full name and address. We will get to it when the time comes. And the applicant's representative on this project is Mr. Nick Maroney. Mr. Maroney. Oh, you're muted, Mr. Maroney.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me now, members of the board?
We can hear you. Go right ahead.
We've reviewed and discussed the referrals that we've received, and we don't see any issues in there that we can't either comply with or present valid reasons why we can't comply with them. If the board is planning to do a site visit and hire a peer review consultant, we think we'd probably rather wait for the results of those comments to do our revisions to these drawings. So having said that, I'd like to introduce Mike Borselli, who is the design engineer on the project. And with respect to his design, let him give a brief explanation of what this project's about.
Very good.
Good evening, board members. Mr. Chairman, do I have the floor?
Certainly do. Go right ahead, Mr. Borselli.
Thank you, sir. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering. I represent the applicant along with Nick Marioni. We reviewed the report from Scott Schluter that was read into the record. Most, if not all, of the comments are easily addressed. So we will make the revisions as we can, but we would like to defer it until such time as you choose to elect a peer review engineer, because there may be differences of opinion and it would be more efficient to make plan revisions, hopefully one time instead of twice. With that, if you don't mind, and I'd be brief, Mr. Chairman, if I could share my screen, I'll just go over the plan quickly.
Sure, go right ahead, Mr. Borselli.
Thank you. Hopefully you're seeing a site plan. Rebecca Ann Road, Elaine is at the bottom of the screen. This property is located one lot in from Route 28, If you look to the far left side of the plan, you'll see East Falmouth Highway and the intersection at Route 28. The first property on the corner is a commercial development. It's a photography studio. Across the street is Kenyon's Market and the commercial facility. The corner lot on the opposite corner is also commercial use. And then as you make your way into the site, it becomes residential from that point on. The site before you tonight is 1.33 acres of land. There are 5 duplexes scattered throughout the site. And there's parking associated with the units. There's a proposed common septic system that you can see on the plan. There's also drainage that's been designed to accommodate the surface waters of the driveway. All of the buildings will have dry wells to contain roof runoff. There was a comment I would like to mention that was made by Mr. Schluter about the water system. While it's true that the plan did say water and utilities, we purposely did not show any water system because we had hoped to get comments from the water superintendent, but there was no referral from the water department on this, so I'm not sure where they stand. But there's different ways to handle delivering water to the units. So before we got into a real comprehensive design, we wanted to get some feedback. It might be a case of the transition from when Mr. Rafferty, who recently retired, and the new water superintendent took over. I have yet to meet the new water superintendent or have any conversations with him. So we're open to whatever makes most sense to the town. But we didn't deliberately leave the water off. We wanted to wait and see what we got for comments. The parking, as I said, is laid out to meet the standards, 2 spaces per unit. There are 2 designated guest parking spaces. After review of the report from Mr. Schluter, we've realized there's some other opportunities on the site to provide some more guest parking. So when we revise the plan, you will likely see those additional parking spaces. There were some other comments that were helpful and we will consider as well. But we stand ready to meet with the peer review engineer. I haven't met the peer review engineer at this time, and I'm not sure if he's been appointed or what the situation is, but we're standing by to do that. So I just thought I'd give a general overview, and I'm here to answer questions.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Baselli. And again, if there's any members of the public who have any question, comment, or concern regarding the project, go ahead and type in your name and address into the webinar chat, and we will get to it shortly.
So, Mr. Chairman, could you have the administrator go over the process of the peer engineer choosing and since all our comments are from the town engineer, and it seems from the conversation so far, we're not going to get too far without the peer engineer comments. I know that an engineer will be chosen, and then there are monies that will be due from the applicant.
Right. Noreen, if you could give us an update, please.
Sure. So the board, as you can recall, had voted to require peer engineering for all your 40B developments now. What we would be asking for would be a deposit from the applicant, and the town will proceed with a contract for a peer review engineer. And at the time that that contract is executed, we then allow the peer engineer to work with the applicant to review the material for the town, and the peer engineer would also be representing town engineering. So in lieu of their spending extra time that they don't have available at this point in time for review, they do essentially an overview so that they're directing the peer as to the areas that they expect them to review.
Thank you, Noreen. All right, we can
Yeah.
start it off with board
Question?
question. Scott?
Yeah. So without meeting with the peer review and uh, is it appropriate to even go forward or it would be unfair? Mr. Morcelli has some things he has to find out. He has to meet the peer review engineer, all of that. Any testimony we took tonight would be kind of premature, wouldn't it?
Also, all of your material is taped, and we do ensure that the peer engineers have access to all the same material that we do. So they can access the FCTV tape of the meeting if they want to review what has transpired. They also will get full copies of plans. So I don't think there's anything that you would lose by a conversation this evening, but it's up to you.
All right. I mean, I think we could certainly ask questions if there's other aspects of the project that we can certainly inquire about. Staying away from technical engineering questions for now.
Understood?
I'm happy to ask a couple.
Go ahead, Ken.
So the engineer did make an interesting comment about possibly looping the drive, and I mean, could you put that site plan back up, Mike?
Sure. There you go.
Yeah, so I see, you've got this one central driveway, but then you have a couple of, on either end of the development, you have some areas that come very close to the roadway, and I'm just not sure why you don't. Yeah, exactly. And then maybe over here where by the little further to the right. Yeah, no, right there.
Could I, if this is a discussion and I can go back.
It's absolutely a discussion, and I'm just curious because it almost seems like, just to make my point, you could do that, you would actually gain some green space and improve the flow and circulation, but that's
Sure.
my naive.
Your feedback's appreciated. I just wanted to point out one thing. You probably noticed this triangular piece of property right here. We don't
Okay.
own that. So if you follow that line till it converges right about here,
Gotcha.
even crossing this would be an encroachment. So,
Right.
I mean, we'd have to, I'm not saying we couldn't, but we could perhaps, we read the report and we're going to think it through. Our concept with the, our
So
whole,
if you owned that little triangle, then that would be a favorite.
yeah. I was kind of surprised by the town engineer's comments about encouraging multiple curb cuts, frankly, because.
Well, I mean, normally that would be true. I agree. It's just you're already coming so close.
Yeah.
And that, and then you would actually preserve kind of a nice green buffer over most of the lot. But yeah, I see the problem with the triangle there.
There was
The
a comment. There was a comment to try to rotate this building and reconfigure this parking. We're considering that.
Yeah, or maybe the Brandons want to sell it to you. But so that then being a private way, I just was wondering if there's any. Are you overburdening any easements or with this many houses exiting onto that?
I think it might be a question for Nick to answer.
Yeah, we anticipated that question, and we obtained the necessary easement from the owner of the right of way, John Drewry.
So he owns the entire.
He owns the fee in that road, yes.
The whole road.
Yes.
Okay. And then the only other thing that jumped out at me in the layout of these units, in the architectural design of there was one unit or one duplex where you have two enormous offices. They're almost the same size as the living room. I just was wondering what your thinking was in creating that rather than just having little roomier rooms throughout. in those one bedrooms?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not really sure what the owner's motive was for that, except the simplification of the plans. I'd also like to add at this point the comments that were made on the 3-bedroom, one bedroom building. We shared those comments with Mass Housing, and Mass Housing said that they would, by email, they agreed to give us the waiver from the requirement of the 3 bedrooms, so that building can go back to being 2-bedroom units, exactly like the other double 2-bedroom buildings, resolving that problem. And they said they could just handle it on final approval or not on, we didn't need to do any amendments to them right now.
That also gets rid of the issue with the double wall.
Yes, that comment about the double wall. Yeah.
Right.
A
Okay,
lot-
well, those were my immediate, just glancing. at
Could
the
you
plan.
also supply us with that email from Mass Housing, since we don't have that kind of notice, just for the file?
Sure.
Anything else, Ken?
Not at this time.
All right. Bob, anything?
Just that, Ken brought up again about the individual driveways, and normally we don't see all those curb cuts, but one of the things that was mentioned in there is that the individual driveways do handle a parking situation that could get complicated. So, if you have looked at individual driveways and it didn't work, I know you don't own that triangle portion, but there was a comment, what if you went to a triplex model? That would shift everything over. You may not get into those issues with that little triangle portion that you own. I'm glad that Mass Housing is going to give the waiver on the 3-bedroom, because that plan just didn't make any sense to me, that one unit would actually jut into another unit. Do you have a plan for a snow removal plan at all? Or how is trash going to be handled?
We're showing a dumpster on the site, and the snow removal just will remove the snow.
So will there be
Plow it.
will there be any other kind of fees associated, or would that be included in the rental fees, the dumpster removal?
Snow removal is included in the rental amount, so is lawn care.
And could you explain the questions were about that utility allowance? What is that that's mentioned?
Yes, I can explain that. We have a maximum rent we can charge based on the 80%. And without getting into the elaborate formula, the 80% of their income that they earn, only 30% of that could be spent on their housing. In that 30%, it has to include utilities. We have a choice of paying the utilities and charging them the higher rent, or we work with HUD and HAC, Housing Assistance Corp in Hyannis, and we get from them what's a fair utility, an agreed upon fair utility amount to charge for a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom unit, and we reduce the rent by that amount, and that becomes an allowance.
So does something like that, is that something that has to be handled by every unit across the board, or can you have different units differentiate on those payments? Can some units choose to do the allowance? And
No, it's the landlord's choice.
so it changes. So that's not by HUD or HAC. Like all the units don't have to be treated the same. Is that
Yes,
correct?
they do. For that project, all the units have to be treated. So
I'm talking about how they're handling the rental amounts with the utility allowance. You said they basically have two choices. They can handle it, one of two ways. They could, do the higher rent and reduce it, or they can get an allowance set aside for the utility.
Is the allowance. The utility allowance is what we can either.
Do you have to do either or can you do different ones on each unit? You know what I mean? Do you have to either go one formula or the other for the entire project? Or can that differentiate on each, rental? Can they each rental choose which way they want to go?
No, we choose upfront whether we want to pay the utilities, and charge the tenant that amount in the rent, or let the tenant pay the utilities, and then we have that allowance, we take $150 off the rent or whatever it is for 1 or 2 bedroom that's approved by HUD. And it's the same for all the affordables on the project, doesn't apply to the market right now.
I did have one question from the pro forma, and I just didn't know if it was a mistake, or if it was worded differently. So I noticed they do an appraisal for the lot to give the lot value, which was the 175. But then I noticed in one of the other sheets, they use the 175 amount actually as a cost versus what the actual purchase is for. Is that an error on the actual paperwork, or because the purchase and sale, and again, the family's related, so it's great that they can get it at a low cost, but there's a big difference between $100 and $175,000 when you're doing these pro forma statements. So how is that handled?
Well, mass housing doesn't really care what you pay for the land. It's what the as-is appraised value is that becomes your basis. So if let's say you bought a piece of land for $50,000, got it permitted and sold it to somebody, and you bought it for 50,000, it was appraised for 150,000, but you sold it for 550,000. The person who bought its basis is your $150,000 appraisal. So that's why they do the as-is appraisal up front, so that you can't just keep flipping the land over and over, increasing your basis of cost.
My only other thing would be, I'd like to get a legal opinion submitted, and it's a legal zoning opinion, and just a determination that this lot hasn't merged with the lot to the north, which is lot 1, which is that commercial lot. So if we could get a legal opinion submitted that we can submit to town council, that it has not merged since they were in similar ownership. Because on the plan that we have, it's showing that it isn't merged.
So you want a legal opinion?
But a legal zoning opinion, a determination that this lot has not merged with the lot immediately to the south, which is that lot 1, the commercial lot. Both of those lots were jointly owned. So the south lot, which is lot 1, and that's the one at 738 East Falmouth Highway. And that does have a different zoning. It's a business 3. But they would go by the requirements of 240-67, which would need them to have a 40,000 square foot measurement. So we'd like to have a determination that we can give just to show that it isn't merged.
I understand what you're asking, but doesn't this only apply if you have a non-conforming lot?
Well, if they were held in the same ownership already, they might be, and that's why they might have had to be merged. So if your legal opinion says they don't have to be merged, they'll give the reason why. We can just give it to town council, and then we don't have to worry about it at that point. But we need some kind of an opinion submitted just to show that they weren't merged because of the ownership they were held in and the size of the lot for that 240-67.
Okay, as I'm going to ask for this opinion, I just want to be clear. You're asking to show that the lot 2 that we're working with wasn't merged with something else?
So the lot 2 in that first lot on the highway were held in common ownership. So on 240-67, in most cases, because the minimum lot area would have been 40,000 square feet, they may have had to be merged. So we just need a legal opinion showing that they don't have to and they haven't been merged.
Is there any chance I can get an email out of the ZBA to ask?
We can send, we can do. I can give the administrator the writing, and she can email it to you exactly what the opinion needs to be based on.
Mr. Chairman, could I comment on this? Because I have a little knowledge on this.
Sure, if you do, Mr. Baselli, go right ahead.
I'm not an attorney, but I play one on TV. 240, I think we're talking about 240-66. And there's provisions about how a lot will not be considered held in common ownership. And there's one 240-66 C4 and I'm gonna paraphrase it. Any lot held in common ownership with adjoining lots vacant as of 1 January may be treated as not held in common ownership if, as of January 1, 1981, a dwelling was in existence on all other commonly held contiguous lots. So there's a suggestion that, well, you can have land held in common ownership if one has a dwelling and one doesn't, then they can be considered not held in common ownership. I think the same holds true. This is the part where I only play a lawyer on TV. I think the same would be true for a different type of building, like a commercial building. In fact, there may even be a dwelling in that building. I'm not sure, but I have I've been exposed to this in conversations with attorneys. That's how I knew about it. So I'm not rendering an opinion, but I think that there's a provision that allows you to not have to hold it in common ownership.
Thank you, Mr. Baselli. Bob, do you have anything else?
No, that's it for right now, because I think most of the stuff we're gonna have to hear is from the peer engineer,
All right,
you know, when they discuss it with, you know, Mr. Baselli and figure out whatever the changes are suggested.
sure.
There was a couple comments about encroachments in back when we were reading it earlier, though. So when you go over that, I guess just make sure that that stuff's represented on the plan, and that if any of those have to be moved, or if any of those abutters have structures that are encroaching, how you're gonna handle that. And also, I would like to know about that if you're putting a fence in back, it showed that 6-foot vegetative buffer. What is the vegetated buffer that's referenced, which is 6 feet?
I think the assumption was that in Mr. McCoon is working with the abutters trying to work out the issues of encroachments. But the vegetative buffer is on our side of the fence. So the fence would be 1 foot off the property line. We would be putting the vegetative buffer on our side.
I could share the screen and show that to you on
Yeah.
the landscape plan.
Yeah, that'd probably be better.
So here's the landscape plan, not prepared by my office, but along this back line, there's an existing fence that we did survey. This plan doesn't show it in as much detail. My plan does. But the 6-foot vegetated buffer is a proposed buffer that would run along this property line to screen out and provide privacy for the patios. Over here, if you remember, actually, I'll show you. On the layout plan, if anyone's hot, you can look at that snow. My mouse is being uncooperative. There we go. There's an encroaching fence. This is what Mr. McClellan's trying to work out, because the landscape plan shows that vegetated buffer running here, which would be on Mr. McClellan's property, be on the encroaching party's side of the fence. So that detail needs to be worked out. Does that clarify it?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And Mr. Barodi, you had talked when they were mentioning, you know, possibly changes of units like triplexes or quads, that you had discussed it, looked at, you know, different layouts and plans, and you just didn't think that, you know, it met what we were looking for. So who actually reviewed those, and what were the different configurations or layouts that were looked at?
Well, I made a comment about, somebody put a comment in one of the referrals about.
There was a comment when the referrals about, you know, what about doing triplexes or a quad? It would give extra open space. And you had said that you looked at that along with the individual driveways, and it didn't meet what what your plans were. So I was just wondering, what exact configurations did they look at?
When did I say that, Mr. Doe? I'm not sure what I said. I said we looked at, that we among ourselves, looked at and discussed the comments, and we were trying to see which ones we could either accommodate easily or explain why we can't accommodate. Is that what you're lumping into that?
Yeah,
comment you
it
just made? Okay.
seemed like it came when they were talking about triplexes, and you said that you looked at that, and that's not something that you were willing to look at. So maybe, maybe I misunderstood your comment. So are you open to look at a different configuration, like a triplex that would change, give a little more open space or at the individual driveways? Is that something that is up for consideration?
It hadn't been up for consideration. I will discuss it with the owner, but I think that the pushback on that is that those things usually trigger residential sprinkler systems, and it takes away the end unit. It puts a unit in the middle. It makes it different than the end units, and so it's less desirable as an owner to have a triplex, I think, on a rental project than it is for a duplex. But we're going to discuss all of these comments. I'd like to hear yours on the site walk. Is there going to be a site visit? Does the board intend to hold a site?
I mean,
visit?
I would defer to the board. I did a site visit myself. I would like to say it was staked very nicely. It was easy access to get everything. So you could pretty much understand where, everything was presented. So my personal opinion, I don't think on this site, because of the size and the staking, that you really need a group site visit. But if that's something the board wants to do, then I'd be happy to take part in it.
Okay, then I think the referrals we have, Mike Porcelli's discussion with the water department and the peer review engineer's comments, and I think we'll be prepared to come back to the board with what we think is takes a lot of these things into consideration, and we think would be the best we can do.
All right. I had a few questions myself, and I know we didn't get to Mary and Scott. I wanted to circle back to you two. You brought up the issue of what questions should be asked tonight. Did you have anything that's not related to engineering or anything else regarding the project? Nope, sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm just, Mr. Marioni, is your testimony tonight that the application is fully completed?
My testimony that the application is fully completed, no.
It's not fully completed. Is that what you're saying?
I thought it was fairly well completed application, knowing that we have some issues to work out. But I think all the relevant information is in there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Scott. Mary, anything?
Just one item, which is, I'd like a little bit of discussion, and if you want to do it at the next meeting, that's fine, but I'd like it about the handicap accessible plans for the units.
Sure, I think that might be appropriate to flush out at the next meeting. Anything else regarding the project tonight, Mary?
No, not at this time.
All right, thank you. So it's more of a general comment, kind of a question, but that little sliver of property, that lot A, held by Darren and Helen Brandon, it is interesting. And I don't see their names anywhere as an immediate abutter. Do you have any idea as to their status, Mr. Maroney?
I don't.
Just a little quirk to the plan, I guess.
Mr. Chairman, I could. Sorry, that was my phone. I guess people think
No
I'm
worries.
still think I'm working at 9 o'clock at night other than public hearings. We believe that sliver of land is a leftover piece. Mr. McClone has tried to research that and look into that ownership because he wanted to acquire it. But he was advised, he couldn't track down the owner. He was advised not to assume he could occupy it. It's caused a lot of issues with our plan, how to lay things out. Unfortunately, if he can't track down the owner, we can't just assume we could put a driveway on it. I think it might be a piece that just was sort of a leftover piece when Rebecca Ann Lane was developed, and when things were carved up, there was a sliver that was just neglected and not merged with another lot. You know, it may have been more. It could have been a merged perhaps with the lot next door, lot 11, or even with this lot, but there's no evidence that it happened. So we have to be cautious and not assume we can occupy it. And without being able to track down the owner, it kind of puts us in a tough spot. But we can check with him again to see if that was the last conversation I had with Mr. McClone about that.
Thank you, Mr. Baselli. Like I said, it's just a little bit of a quirk to the plan
It
there.
is.
I didn't know if you made any efforts to try
Yeah.
to
We did.
reach out, acquire, anything like that.
Yeah, it would have been great, much more efficient. And as of right now, we haven't been able to.
All right. And Mr. Maroney, you stated tonight that you got permission from the fee holder in the private way, the Rebecca Ann Lane, from Mr. Julie. Is that correct?
That's correct. It should have been included in the application. In fact, I'm sure it was.
Right, right. Are you aware of any rights in the fee in the road or anything like that to the other property, private property owners that live on the street?
You mean they may own to the center of the road, or
Right.
Or anything?
I'm not aware of any other ownership. My understanding is that Mr. Drewley owns the fee in the road, and they're trying to get the road accepted by the town.
I see. Since you do have some frontage on 28, was there any consideration to the entrance of this property actually going out to 28 instead of Rebecca Ann Lane?
We did consider that, but for safety and traffic reasons, and the fact that it was, if you look, oh, I'm not sharing, sorry. If you look on this plan, this is actually the beginning, the entrance to Timothy Bourne Way, another subdivision. In fact, these homes have frontage on Timothy Bourne Way, which is just off the screen. So having yet another driveway right next to this roadway would be a conflict and would not be approved by Mass Highway, who has jurisdiction over this. That was the first thing that just made that not an option. There were other reasons. It's just more aesthetically pleasing to have your driveway entrance off of Rebecca Ann and not off of a much busier road.
Okay. That does it for me for now. Does anyone have any follow-up questions?
Just one question from the application. It said that it asked about are there any existing building instructions, and it says structures, and it says no, the shed has been removed. Is the shed the pen structure that's still there now, or is that a different one?
No, you mean the one that's sort of fallen down in the middle of the site there?
Yeah, right in the middle of the site when you walk in, it looks like it was a shed. Is that what you're talking about in the application, or is the application a different structure?
No, not a different structure. That's the one I'm talking about.
Okay, and that's what you're planning. It hasn't been removed, but it will be removed.
Did I say it had been?
Yeah, it says it said that there are no structures at all, that they've already been removed. So that was my only question, if that was it, since it was still there, but you've answered it, so thank you.
All right. Anything else from the board? All right, seeing none.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more question?
Go right ahead.
Procedurally, I guess it's a question for Noreen with regard to the water superintendent. Are we ever going to get feedback from the new water superintendent? How do we go about that? I've never met him. With COVID, we can't just go in and meet and greet down at the DPW. The town has standards. I think the peer review engineer is likely to defer to the water department for water system layout. But given the fact that Mr. Rafferty retired, who was pretty easily acceptable and active in given feedback. I don't even know who the gentleman is. How do we proceed with that? I mean, did they get a copy of the application? Did they just choose not to respond? How do we operate if we can't get a response from a referral?
So I would think we will follow up with them. I know following Mr. Rafferty's retirement, there was a gap left at the DPW, and so it may be that, they're trying to get up to speed with covering the things that he dealt with. So I can follow up with them on that though. And I'm sure that whoever's in charge can get in touch with you, or that you'll be able to access them as well.
Should I reach out to them directly, or does it have to
You
go
certainly, yeah, no, you certainly can.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, and before we get a continuance date, how does everyone feel about a site visit? I saw the site myself. I know that Bob did. I'm not sure if it,
I think it's helpful to go applicant.
I'm good. I mean, I went out, they had it all brush mowed and staked very well. I'm good with it if we don't do one.
all right.
Others are not on my own.
I can go.
Sorry, Ken, at least on my feed, you're kind
others
of dipping
do-
out
If
there.
there isn't a strong sentiment for others to go with the applicant, I'll just go on my own. That's fine.
All right. Mary, how do you feel?
I don't feel the need to have a group, but if others do, I'd go along with it.
All right. I'm all set, given what I've seen myself, so we might pass on a group site visit this time around. Not sure if this site presents the same challenges and as others in the past. Okay, so we are looking at a continuance date. Noreen, do we have one?
So let's see, we could or add them on to December 10 or January 7. I don't have a problem with either date. The only, I guess, potential issue right now is we will have to get a contract with a peer engineer and get them on board. I mean, certainly,
Currently, what else is on December 10th?
we have one other new 40B.
All right, if we have a 40B on December 10th, I don't want to hear them together. I'd rather go January. They get too complicated because you have to spend so much time on these. And the applicants have to spend up time on these. We'd be getting through one, rushing to get to the other.
And with the
And, you know, as we-
holidays, that gives
The
enough
holidays,
time
yeah.
to square everything away with the peer engineer.
Yep.
So I'd go with the January.
January 7th.
All right, would anyone like to make that motion then?
So I'll make a motion to continue this to January 7th, 2021.
I'll second it.
All right, motion to continue to January 7th, 2021, made by Bob, seconded by Scott. Roll call vote. Mary?
Mary Berry, aye.
Ken?
And Foreman, aye.
Bob?
Robert Dugan, aye.
Scott?
Scott Zelinski, aye.
And TJ Hurry, aye. So the hearing is continued to January 7th, 2021. Mr. Maroney and Mr. Borselli, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
you.
Good evening. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our public hearings. We do have open meeting items. Up first, we have voting the minutes from October 1st, 2020 and October 15th, 2020. We'll take them one at a time as usual. October 1st, 2020, has everyone had a chance to review them? And anything?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the October 1, 2020 meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, motion to approve the minutes for October 1st, 2020, made by Ed, seconded by Scott. Roll call vote. Mary?
Mary Berry, aye.
Ken?
Ed Van Kuren, aye.
Thank you, Ed. Ken,
And Forman, aye.
Bob,
Robert Dugan, aye.
Scott,
Scott Zelinski, aye.
James,
James Morse, aye.
and TJ Hurry, aye. So the minutes voted in October 15th.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from October 15th, 2020.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right.
I actually
Motion.
read them.
Motion to accept the minutes made by Ed, seconded by Bob. Roll call vote. Mary,
Mary Berry I.
Ken,
And Forman, aye.
Bob,
Robert Dugan, aye.
Ed,
Ed Van Kuren, aye.
Scott,
Scott Zelinski, aye.
James,
James Morse, aye.
and TJ Hurry, aye. So the minutes from October 15th are accepted. Up next, we have board administrative approval of 115-18 Woods Hole Partners LLC, 533 Woods Hole Road, Woods Hole. It's a request for modifications to previously approved plans and a vote anticipated. Just a reminder for everyone, board administrative approvals are just that, they're administrative. It is not a public hearing. The board does not take public comment, and we generally review the submission on the papers themselves before rendering a decision. And we usually give Noreen a moment to explain the administrative approval if you want to, Noreen.
So actually, Robert Dugan has the list
Oh, okay.
from the files, so I will defer to him for this
Very
one.
good.
Thank you very much. All right, so let me just read a brief thing first. So basically, the applicant is seeking an administrative approval to modify the special permit, which is 115-18, which had allowed for the applicant to raise the existing dilapidated motel structures and construct 39 market rate age-restricted units, 55 plus, and 4 affordable 3-bedroom units. Throughout the permitting process, the applicant made a number of minor changes to the plans in response to comments and concerns by various boards. They're saying that none of these changes independently or collectively have constituted a substantial deviation from the approved plans and will not change the nature and intent of the permit. And that's why they feel these minor changes may be permitted as an administrative approval by the administrator or the board. They have attached a list. Why don't I just go through the list first? I think everyone has a copy of it. The changes to the planned site are as follows. The footprint of the dome and the ancillary structure have become smaller and shifted slightly. The bollard lights have been added along walkways to the dome. Footprints to building C and D have shifted slightly. The footprint to building E has shifted to increase separation to the dome and has been reduced. There have been minor revisions and adjustments to the site grading and utilities driven by changes to the building footprints and the layouts. The following are changes. Building A, the ridge line and roof slopes were lowered and the attic dormers simplified. Building B, paneling added at the windows. The gable roof ends have been designed with shiplap. A projection detail was added to the left and right gables to provide a shingle line, and there was a slight modification to the roof layout. Building C, the roof line has been modified. Shiplap was added to the design at the gable ends. Building D, the footprint was modified to add a 2-foot bump out at the rear. The roof line was modified to allow new gable roofs and roof layout for the 2-foot bump out. Shiplap was added to design at the gable ends. Building E, the ridge line and roof slopes were lowered. The balcony locations were adjusted. The footprint was reduced and adjusted to be located further from the dome. The window and the chimney layout was altered. The retaining wall at the rear of the structure was redesigned. The attic dormer layout was adjusted. Building F and G, gambrel roof designs have been updated. A new front porch for roof overhang was designed. Additional windows provided on the rear of the buildings. And for the dome, the footprint and design of the ancillary building to the dome has been reduced. The staircase to remain inside the existing concrete masonry foundation footprint. So that's the that's the list we have in file that we could review. I'd make my own comment. I assume this project is still under appeal. Because we were all served on the appeal and I haven't heard anything different. I feel extremely uncomfortable making changes to any plan that is currently under a legal appeal. On top of that, this is a long list. And I don't have, we don't have copies of what each one of these changes are. I mean, individual changes must be fine, but once you start adding these all together as a whole, it may be a problem. So what I've seen here, I would not be in favor of doing this administratively at this time.
And Noreen, I don't know if you could provide any further comment, but the status of that appeal, is that still underway?
It is. We don't have any current updates. And I guess, not that I have a vote here, but just in line with the comments that Bob made, where they have talked about shifting footprints and changing grading, et cetera. We do not have any comments from engineering to reflect whether they would be comfortable with these, if that raises any future issues, et cetera. So I guess the board should consider whether these changes that they're proposing as minor have actually been evaluated by town staff.
Understood. Thank you, Noreen.
I agree with Bob for what.
Very good.
Yeah, I do too.
That's why.
All right, Mary?
Yeah, I agree.
My internet connection is unstable. James, how about yourself?
I agree with Bob.
All right, I think we're all in agreement here. Would anyone like to make a motion then?
I guess I move that these are not insubstantial changes, and if we were to approve them, we would require the reopening of the hearing.
Very good. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Foreman.
Second.
All right, motion made by Ken, seconded by Scott. Roll call vote. Ken?
Ken Forman, aye.
Bob?
Robert Dugan, aye.
Ed?
Ed Van Kuren, aye.
Scott?
Scott Zelinski, aye.
And TJ Hurry, aye. So the motion passes unanimously. Okay, up next, board discussion, management of abutter participation for Zoom hearings. I did speak to Associate Town Council Irene Mullen. She did reach out to me, and we spoke at least regarding abutter participation. She stressed the issue that it's the town's official policy of basically how the participation is in place as it stands. And I was going to reach out to other chairs about this issue and see how that they're dealing with it. To say I've been busy recently is an understatement, and I have not done so. My apologies to the board. And I plan on following up with those chairs tomorrow and throughout the weekend, just to touch base and see how they're dealing with the issue. So that's at least my personal update on.
So regarding the town policy, since they said it is a policy, so is that a written policy? Can we post that? Does the town post it, or is this the town policy that is accepted? But I mean, I would assume where you're dealing with hearings, that if it is a town policy, that's fine, but it should be posted somewhere, or we should at least post it. So maybe they could supply us with something that said, this is how the town is going forward with hearings. And we're either conforming to what the town is suggesting or not, but just to say it's town policy and not give us anything is a little difficult when it comes to the public side of it, because the public's looking at it and say, well, where does that show up anywhere? So maybe Irene or Frank can give us what the written statement is that they've given to the other I guess since it's town-wide, they must have submitted something to all the boards and committees.
So when we send out the notices, letters, we do specifically delineate on a full page how they can participate. And if somebody logs in similarly to the zoning board's website, it tells you as well. You know, we haven't gone into a long text explanation as to why it was determined to be the way it is. You know, but essentially what town council's trying to ensure is that the board can meet its legal requirements. And while it's not ideal for abutters because they're not able to attend in person, town council feels that the provision they've made will satisfy the law, and that just because we're in this COVID situation, they need to obviously make sure that you don't wind up with Zoom bombing or something where something appears on the screen that's inappropriate. So I think they have opted to be conservative in order to essentially protect the town as well.
I just, and I understand that. I know we'd probably go along with it. I just think they should supply us with something in writing, or the town should have something posted that's, if they're telling us this is how we have to handle it, we should
Right,
be able
so-
to, you know, show a document and say that we have to handle it this way because this is how we've been instructed. And I haven't found anything anywhere. So maybe it is posted and I'm looking in the wrong spot, but
No, we did get the information distributed to us from town council. We didn't post it per se because it was advice to us on how we were to manage participation. So what we did was we took their advice and presented it on the website, and it gets emailed or mailed out to the abutters on how they can participate. We did not go into a long litany on why the town has chosen to act this way.
no, and I'm not asking for them to show why they're acting. I'm just saying if this is a decision they're made, they should have something written up, posted on the town website that says this is how the town proceeds with boards, you know, until further notice, you know, because I understand this is their advice and it's probably the best thing to handle it. But, you know, in my discussions, and I had some questions, just basic questions. And one of the questions is, if the policy is that you can submit videotape or information, then how can we close any hearing on the first presentation of the night it's presented? Because once an applicant is presented, anyone could review that meeting and then they could be allowed to submit comments after the fact regarding that discussion by video. And it was suggested to me that then that might be the best way to go, is that you leave the hearings open for the first hearing, giving people the opportunity if they have to comment, because, you know, a lot of these people on the outside, they don't know how to do the video and they don't know how to do the chat. And they need, you know, they want to see what the hearing is and they want to see if they have any questions. And a lot of them have limited access. I mean, we have trouble all the time with our video feeds and access. You start typing in comments and you can't pay attention to the actual meeting that's going on itself. So at least in complicated cases, or in cases that we have any questions about a project, it may be good just not to close anything the first night. If there's questions, to allow somebody else to submit, we wouldn't even be able to close the file.
Well, I think if somebody reaches out to you and they say they would like to participate, then it certainly makes sense to continue. What I would say to you is, if you have no abutter contact, if no one contacts the office, if they don't attend on Zoom, etc., what would be your purpose for leaving a hearing open, except that you will wind up with massively long agendas?
No, I understand, but the people that don't have some of that access can then watch the video feed from FCTV that's posted, and
Right.
then if they could comment. You know, it's just try to give them the opportunity to comment if they're needed. It's also my understanding that if an application comes in and in a butter has gotten legal counsel, that they're not allowed to appear at the hearing. They also can only submit by video or chat function, but we can't discuss anything with them. They actually can't be at, a video. We can't say that, a butter A, your counsel is going to present his arguments of what they see as problems to this project, and the board is now going to be able to interact with them. They would
you're
only be
probably
allowed
not
to do it through chat.
You're probably not going to find out till an abutter files an appeal using this, and it sets some kind of precedent where they have to rule on it one way or the other. That's what's going to have to happen.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is we've had situations already with Zoom where we've had opposing counsel present. And according to this town policy, if that's the policy, we're not allowed to do that.
Right, so I guess what I'm expecting is that if somebody wants to prepare a video or they have an attorney, that attorney can prepare their remarks or their presentation and send it in, and it would be played at the meeting. As opposed
How does the rebuttal of that work?
Well, then I guess they'd have to be watching, and they could use the chat function to respond.
But doesn't that have to be identified? I mean, it's sort of like building a plane while you're flying it.
It's not ideal, that's for sure.
Especially in a plane.
Yeah.
Do you know you have to be out of that bar in 10 minutes, Ken?
I'm at the bar.
You have to be out by 9:30.
Oh, well, that's right. So I better drink up.
That's right.
Picture any of the attorney rebuttals we've heard in the last year and tell me how that's going to show up in a chat function.
No, it's not going to be ideal, and
I mean, you can't.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it will just be that there are some cases that are, there's more participation, and you'll just need to provide for that, as opposed to, I think, when you have relatively straightforward applications, and if there is no utter participation, that you go ahead and vote and close that night. I mean, I suppose to some extent you're going to have to play it by ear, but it's the way that it's set up right now. It's not ideal, but it's the best that the town has been able to determine.
All right. Any other comment on it from anyone? All right. And then
TJ, are you planning to reach out to others?
yes.
Will that be done soon so we can see what you found?
Yes, tomorrow and hopefully over the weekend too. And I apologize again to the board.
And then how will you get that information to us?
Probably the next meeting.
Or through Noreen, you can always.
Right, it could go through Noreen. She could
Yep.
she could email out everyone out.
That would be more expedient.
Absolutely, because our next meeting isn't until the 19th, so I would rather have that sooner than later. All right. Any board updates? All right, seeing none. Any future agenda items?
I just have a question since we're in this kind of situation still. There was something that came out about training. Is that, I'm assuming everybody got it. What's the way that that's handled? Is that something covered by the town and a budget item? Or how do we decide if it's appropriate training or that kind of thing?
Was this the Citizens Planning Collaborative? Is that the one that you got?
Yes.
So I can certainly check with the town manager and see, if for whatever, if somebody is interested in participating in whatever, and then I will just check with the town and check that they cover that fee.
But as you can imagine, the fees are not very high. I just wondered if some of them were ones that were covered in, for example, the town bots planning board, what we've already had, that kind of thing, or which ones would be recommended by others that might have attended in the past.
I could certainly look them over. I think I've probably attended about 90-something% of what they offer. And, certainly any information to me or knowledge or something that's a benefit is always a benefit to yourself and the town for growth. And I
Thank you, Noreen. All right, anything else?
Did we get any feedback on, we had made comments before with 40Bs and stuff, that we really should have some kind of counsel at these meetings. We should have some kind of legal representation at these meetings. I know a letter or something was gonna go up, saying that, we're looking for something like that. Tonight we had issues because there's no peer engineer yet. So, basically you can't really discuss anything. Sometimes questions or testimony comes up. It's a lot different when you have counsel here, and it's not all hearings, but these 40Bs are just complicated, and sometimes you need answers and you gotta hold them to the answers that they say, different words. And I thought something was gonna go out to the manager's office on situations with 40Bs on not only these peer reviews, but if they don't want to have legal representation and we're going outside, then quite honestly, somebody from the town council's office should be at our 40B hearings. They should attend them. They should physically see what's being said, what the testimony is, what the questions are, and then advise us from what they've experienced. What should we be doing? What shouldn't we be doing? What are our options?
It almost forces us. I found myself a lot of times now asking questions just to get things into the record, in case we have to refer back to them at a later date just to corroborate testimony. And we had spoke about there's no sworn testimony and not a legal representative. It's just a representative, and they have no requirement to have to do that, right?
You go to some of these applications like something like we got tonight, or these big applications they have with the state. There's a sworn testimony statement in these applications. They're not signed. You've got answers to questions that aren't correct answers to questions, or things are left blank, or things are stated that they've been done and they haven't been done. And having some kind of counsel at this meeting, it just visually it goes a long way. Them answering questions to us and them answering questions. TJ and James, and answering a question in front of an attorney specifically on a case is a lot different than just answering questions to, somebody else. At least they feel that they have to be held to some kind of a standard. I just don't feel we have. When we're getting applications on 40Bs and the applications state they're legal representatives, and those legal representatives never appear or submit anything to us. And then all of a sudden you get to appeal situations, and then that representative comes out of the woodwork and we've never even met them. A lot of the projects, the larger projects we have, or when I first got on the board, every 40B that came in had an attorney, and they were very specific. And the presentations moved fast. And I just think it's a disadvantage on 40Bs if we do not have representation for all the 40B hearings. I don't care what size they are. I think we need representation at every 40B hearing, just like we need a peer review. I said a long time ago, I think we should have an architectural peer review. We all went to different training programs. the one expert in the state on her board, and she's been on the board for 40 years, said that they require an architectural peer review on every single 40B they ever have. And when things have gone to appeal with the state, they have always won on their architectural review. We don't even have that. So,
Like to know who their architectural consultant.
yeah,
Right.
but it just seems that we're flying without a net half the time, and we should have it. And if we don't have separate counsel, the town has counsel. Have them appear. It's very hard to get town council to appear. I'm sure they have, you know, they're loaded with everything else too. But then if they can't handle it, maybe they can assign somebody that has a background in 40B.
And it wasn't that bad when there was only one coming in every quarter or two a quarter, but now they're every other week.
And we're getting 2 and 3 on hearing nights. That's what I mean. And the other thing is on the scheduling. And I know, Noreen, you gotta juggle the schedules. I really think 40B should be separate. I don't think we should have to worry about dealing with everything else the night of a 40B.
That's
I mean, we kind of
easy to-
lucked out.
That's
Yeah, I
easy
mean,
to
we-
say, Robert, but you know, come on, Dave.
Well,
What are we supposed to do?
We used to meet. I mean, we meet now, which is great, every other week. But when I started, we never met every other week. We always met every week.
Yeah, but
And then once in a while, you'd have breaks in between.
take into consideration too, the amount of workload and preparation that has to get for every week. If we took one every week, they can't keep up now with the amount of information that's coming in to get it back to us.
No, but I mean, just on the 40B.
Without added staff, I don't think you could handle the workload every week, every single week. I mean, that's just my opinion.
No, but you should be able to take on the 40B applications. You should be able to at least start them or something on a separate night. Or, you know, one of the other applications we've been on for a while. I mean, when that first started, we got it way halfway through the night and then we're here till 11 o'clock. And then you drain down. I mean, 10, 11 o'clock at night, we're not looking at these applications the way we are at 6:30, or we never seem to take these applications at the beginning of the night. We always take them at the end. Maybe we should be taking them at the beginning.
And then but then what happens when something goes down in the middle of a hearing?
And you're making the poor applicant that, you know, just wants to add a dormer, sit there all night through your 40B. I don't think that's right.
Which is why I think 40B should be separate night.
Oh, I think the one problem is it's one thing when you're covering ground. You know, most of the 40Bs that I've worked on in the past, they had a team and they wanted to present the information to you. And, you know, night number 1, for example, was show and tell night. They were showing you the site. They were showing you the design and the layout of the houses. They were showing you the setbacks. They were getting into engineering. They were covering all the facts. And here tonight, you know, you're sort of getting scratch of the surface. And I think if you had scheduled only this 140B for the night, you would have essentially wasted the board's time.
So there's an idea on teams. You mentioned teams. So you read these applications from the state, and they have a team page, and it's very specific. You have to list every team member in a bio and a history. We have one, the one we heard tonight, lists a developer and a representative. There's no engineering or anybody mentioned. The one that we had weeks ago, there's 3 or 4 people not mentioned. The bios, they're very specific. If you're involved currently in any 40B or any project within this town, you have to list it. You have to say the status. Has it been approved? Has it been appealed? Has it been built? Has there been problems with it? All the recent applications we've gotten, that's all been left out.
That's why I asked that question that was my only question tonight. You know, is your testimony that this application is complete? And I'm finding the last 2 haven't been so far.
And they're not complete. You read these pages through and you read what the questions are asked and the answers, and they're not complete. You've got somebody giving examples of projects they did, you know, 6, 7 years ago, and none of them are in the town, and you know they've done projects in the town. You've got questions on the application about litigation. Are you involved in any litigations? And in some cases, they're listing some litigations, they're not listing other litigations. So, you know, maybe that's a discussion that we talk to someone in the state and ask why we're seeing the applications and the information isn't being provided to us. And some of the information that's being provided to us is wrong. It isn't our job to go through these applications and figure out every question they answered wrong.
And we can't go and verify it.
No.
I mean, we can't go independently and verify any of it. So you
I
have
will
to
say we are at 9:30 right now. Did we want to have a further discussion regarding this?
No,
we're not going to resolve anything.
Ken needs to call an Uber and get a ride out.
All right, but Bob and Scott,
Exactly.
you
You're
bring up
going to
very
come
good
pick me up,
points.
Scott?
Yeah, I'll come get you.
You know where I am.
Yes, sir.
All right. But Bob and Scott, you bring up very good points, and I think we should be following up on those issues.
Well, I mean, the only thing that occurs to me is, yeah, Nick, tonight they had nothing. They really had nothing. And why did we even hear it?
Because it's almost like when they come now, they expect us to give them a list of things that they need to come back with, when in fact, it should be in that application, and all the referrals and everything else should have been already addressed before they come to us. But because we allow them to do that and nobody wants to say anything out loud, I was ready to ask for, that's why I asked, why do we take this? Why do we even entertain it tonight if they're not ready?
I mean,
So
I
we
guess in one, well, I don't know, Noreen, could we
so we have to open
deny,
it,
can we
correct?
deny within a certain time frame for lack of information? Or does COVID not permit that anymore?
Well, so with 40Bs, there's great flexibility, and the submissions can be preliminary. They don't have to be, finalized. There's definitely a lot of problems with that. But one suggestion I would have with the board, though, is when you look at not picking on any particular development, but I think if you look at plans and you say, hey, I would like those units pulled, forward toward the street. I would like to see less pavement. I would like to see you preserve trees. I would like you to have a play space for kids. I think it's fine. The earlier that you make those comments about the site, the earlier the developers can work on making some plan changes that would meet your requirements.
You do have to open them though, correct? For when he actually, that's the one thing we have to do legally. We have to open it within that many days.
Exactly.
Isn't it our duty to dictate how we want to accept the information, how we do things and what is required? If we leave it arbitrary, then we're going to be going through this forever. I mean, once the developers in town accept the fact that we're requiring such and such on the opening night of a meeting, I think that's going to be important. Otherwise, it just gets convoluted.
Maureen, do we actually have to open even with an incomplete application or an application that has material omissions? I can't see that being upheld on appeal if the application is not complete. I don't think we're under an obligation to open at that point.
You would seem to be right.
I agree.
I think from a legal perspective, you would be advised that if you find that the application is incomplete, that they would still tell you legally that you would want to open the hearing, because you could wind up in a massive situation where if you said, hey, I'm not going to book you, we're not going to open the hearing, and the state turns around and says, well, you should have, and they give a constructive grant because you didn't open the hearing, you're much better off to open the hearing and then specifically ask for what you're looking for. Now, on the opposite side, if you ask them for information and they don't provide it, then they're putting themselves in jeopardy. So it's a little bit convoluted, unfortunately.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Noreen. Anything else from the board? All right. Our
That's
next
enough
meeting?
for tonight.
All right, our next meeting is November 19th, 6:30 here at Zoom Town Hall. See everyone then.
Good
Have a good night.
everybody.
Night.
Have a good night.